Mr. Mason, she's back again. Eric looked up from his laptop, already annoyed. His head of security, James, stood in the doorway with that familiar expression of frustration. The singing woman? Eric's jaw tightened. Yes, sir. Same spot, right outside the main entrance. The International Summit delegates are arriving in 2 hours. Eric pushed back from his desk and walked to a window. 30 stories below, he could see the entrance of the Grand Rwanda Hotel, his crown jewel. And there she was, a small figure in ragged clothes, sitting cross-legged on the pavement, her mouth moving in that endless, haunting song. For 3 months now, this homeless woman had been his nightmare. She appeared every morning at exactly 7 o'clock, sat in the same spot, and sang. Not regular singing, just the same melody over and over, wordless and strange. Tourists found it disturbing. Business partners found it unprofessional. Eric found it infuriating. I've called the police 12 times, James said. They remove her. She comes back. I've offered her money to leave. She won't take it. Yesterday, she was singing during the French ambassador's arrival. Eric grabbed his suit jacket. I'll handle this myself. Sir, maybe that's not. I said I'll handle it. 5 minutes later, Eric pushed through the hotel's golden revolving doors. The morning air hit him, warm and thick, with the smell of street food from nearby vendors. His perfectly polished shoes clicked against the pavement as he approached the woman. She was older than he'd thought, maybe 60, her hair gray and matted. Her clothes were layers of torn fabric, her feet bare and cracked. But her eyes were closed as she sang, lost in whatever world existed behind those lids. You need to leave, Eric said, his voice sharp. Now. She didn't stop singing, didn't even open her eyes. I'm talking to you. Eric stepped closer. This is private property. You're harassing my guests. I'm giving you one chance to walk away before I have you arrested. The melody continued, rising and falling like waves. Something inside Eric snapped. 3 months of patience, of restraint, of watching this woman damage his reputation. He raised his hand, ready to grab her shoulder, to shake her into acknowledging him. Don't touch her. A hand caught Eric's wrist midair. He spun around to find a street vendor gripping his arm, a woman maybe 50 years old, selling fruit from a wooden cart. Her name was Grace. He'd seen her around. Let go of me, Eric said coldly. Mr. Mason, please. Grace's voice shook, but she didn't release him. You don't understand. You can't hurt her. She's trespassing, disturbing my business. I have every right. She's your mother. The words hung in the air like smoke. Eric stared at Grace, then laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. My mother is dead. She died 31 years ago when I was 6 months old. So, whatever scam you're running. Your mother didn't die, Grace said quietly. Her name is Maria, and she's been looking for you since the day the world fell apart. Eric pulled his arm free. You're insane. The genocide, Mr. Mason. 1994. You're only 3 years old. The word hit Eric like a fist. He never talked about the genocide. Never thought about it. His memories before age 7 were blank, empty, a dark space his mind refused to enter. French aid workers had found him in an orphanage, adopted him, given him everything. They told him his parents died. That was all he knew, all he wanted to know. I don't remember anything from that time, Eric said, his voice harder now. And I don't appreciate you using a tragedy to. That's because trauma steals memory, Grace interrupted, especially from children. But she remembers Mr. Mason. She remembers everything. She just can't speak it. Eric looked at the singing woman. At Maria, Grace called her. She hadn't stopped, hadn't even acknowledged the confrontation happening around her. If she's looking for her son, why doesn't she say so? Why the singing? Grace's eyes filled with tears. Because singing is all she has left. The things she saw, the things that happened, they broke something in her mind. She can talk about simple things, food, weather. But anything deep, anything about the past, about love, about pain, it only comes out in songs. The lullaby she sang to you before the world ended. This is ridiculous. Eric turned to walk away. You were wearing a blue shirt with an elephant on it. Grace called after him. She remembers. You had a birthmark on your left shoulder blade, shaped like a star. You were terrified of thunderstorms, so she'd sing to you until you fell asleep. Eric stopped, slowly. He reached back and touched his left shoulder blade through his expensive suit. The birthmark was there. He'd always had it. And thunderstorms, even now, at 30 years old, he couldn't sleep through them. Lucky guesses, he said, but his voice wavered. The song she's singing, Grace continued. Listen to it. Really listen. Somewhere in your heart, you know it. Against his better judgment, Eric stood still and listened. The melody wound around him, wordless but somehow full of meaning. And deep in the darkest corner of his mind, something stirred. A feeling, a memory of safety, of warm arms, of a voice singing him to sleep while the world outside screamed. No, Eric whispered. There's a DNA testing clinic 3 blocks from here, Grace said. One test, Mr. Mason. That's all I'm asking. Prove me wrong if you can. Eric looked at his hotel, his empire, everything he'd built. Then he looked at the singing woman, at Maria, still lost in her endless melody. Fine, he said. One test. And when it proves you're lying, I never want to see either of you near my property again. But even as he said it, his hand remained on his shoulder blade, tracing the star-shaped mark, and the song wrapped around his heart like a memory trying to come home. Can Eric handle the truth about his past? What really happened during those lost years? Hit the like button and keep watching to find out if this homeless woman is really his missing mother, and discover the heartbreaking story of how she lost everything searching for him. The clinic smelled like antiseptic and fear. Eric sat in the waiting room, his leg bouncing nervously despite his efforts to appear calm. Across from him, Maria hummed that same melody while Grace held her hand. This is a waste of time, Eric said for the 3rd time. Then why are you still here? Grace asked gently. Eric had no answer. He should be at the hotel preparing for the summit. Instead, he was in a modest clinic, waiting to prove that a homeless woman wasn't his dead mother. It was absurd. The nurse called them back. Maria went first, still humming as they swabbed her cheek. She didn't seem to understand what was happening, just followed Grace's gentle instructions like a child. When it was Eric's turn, he opened his mouth mechanically, let them swab, and tried to ignore the way his heart was racing. Results in 48 hours, the technician said. We'll call you. 2 days. Eric could survive 2 days. Except he couldn't stop thinking about it. That night, alone in his penthouse, he stood on his balcony and watched the city lights. Kigali was beautiful now, modern and clean, rising from ashes like a phoenix. They called it the Singapore of Africa. Eric had helped build this new version, had poured millions into hotels and businesses and infrastructure. But there was another Kigali, one he never acknowledged. The Genocide Memorial. The survivors who still bore machete scars. The orphans who grew up without families. The generation that lost everything. Eric had always told himself he wasn't part of that story. He was adopted by French parents, educated in Paris, returned as an investor, clean, separate, untouched. But what if he wasn't? His phone buzzed. James. Sir, I found something. About Maria. I'm listening. She's been living at the Hope Shelter on the east side for 5 years. Before that, she spent 8 years at St. Michael's Psychiatric Facility. Before that, there's no record. It's like she didn't exist. Everyone exists in records, Eric said. Not if they were lost during the genocide, sir. Thousands of people had no documentation afterward. They were just ghosts. Eric ended the call and poured himself whiskey. He didn't drink. He tried to work, but the numbers on his screen blurred. He tried to sleep, but the humming melody played in his head. The next morning, he did something he'd never done. He went to the Genocide Memorial. It was early before the tourist crowds. Eric walked through the gardens where 250,000 people were buried. He read the names on the walls, looked at the photographs of the dead. Families, children, entire villages erased. In one room, there were testimonies from survivors. Eric found himself reading them, one after another, Stories of horror and loss and impossible survival. A woman who hid in a septic tank for 3 weeks. A man who watched his family murdered and survived by pretending to be dead. A mother who was separated from her infant son and spent decades searching. Eric's hand started shaking. First time here. He turned to find an elderly man, a memorial guide, watching him with kind eyes. Yes, Eric admitted. It's heavy, the guide said, but important. Are you Rwandan? I don't know. The guide nodded as if this made perfect sense. Many of us don't know who we are anymore. The genocide took more than lives. It took identities, histories, families. We're a nation of missing pieces. How do you find the pieces? Eric asked. Sometimes they find you. That afternoon, Eric's phone rang. The clinic. Mr. Mason, your results are ready. His mouth went dry. Already? You said 48 hours. The test was conclusive enough to rush. Can you come in? Eric drove himself. Didn't trust the driver to see his hands trembling. Grace was already there, sitting with Maria, who was singing softly. They both looked up when he entered. The doctor, an older woman with gray hair, gestured to her office. Please sit. Eric remained standing. Just tell me. She opened the file. The DNA test shows a 99.97% probability of a maternal match. Mr. Mason, this woman is definitely your biological mother. The room tilted. Eric grabbed the desk. That's impossible. My mother died in 1994. I was told. What you were told and what happened are clearly different things, the doctor said gently. This is definitive. Maria is your mother. Eric stumbled out of the office. Grace and Maria looked up. The older woman's eyes met his, and for the first time since he'd seen her, she stopped singing. Mama? She whispered, the word broken and uncertain. And Eric felt something crack open inside him, a dam breaking. 30 years of nothing pouring out all at once. I don't understand, he said, his voice breaking. How? Why? Where have you been? But Maria couldn't answer. Her mouth open and closed, struggling. And then the only thing that came out was a melody again, rising desperately as if the song could explain everything her words couldn't. Grace stepped forward. She can't tell you, Mr. Mason, but I can help her show you, if you're willing to listen, if you're willing to remember. Eric looked at this woman, his mother. The DNA proved it his mother, and felt terror and longing war inside him. I don't remember anything, he said helplessly. Maybe it's time you did, Grace replied. The genocide started on April 7th, 1994. You were 3 years old, and somewhere in your mind, buried under all that fear, you remember what happened. You remember her. Eric closed his eyes and heard the melody, and underneath it, like a whisper from the grave, he heard screaming. The DNA doesn't lie. But what happened during those missing years? How did Eric's mother survive? And what terrible secrets are buried in the forgotten memories? Subscribe and keep watching as we uncover the heartbreaking truth that's been hidden for 3 decades. Eric didn't go back to the hotel. Instead, he sat in his car outside the clinic for 2 hours, staring at nothing, his perfect world crumbling around him. His phone rang continuously. James, his assistant, the French ambassador. Important people needing important things. Eric ignored them all. Finally, Grace tapped on his window. You can't run from this, she said when he rolled it down. I'm not running. I'm thinking. No, you're hiding. Grace opened the passenger door and got in without invitation. I know this is overwhelming, but that woman in there has been broken for 30 years. Your only chance to be whole again. I don't know how to help her, Eric said. I don't even know how to help myself. Then let me tell you what I know. Grace settled into the seat. 5 years ago, I was volunteering at Hope Shelter when Maria arrived. She was in bad shape, malnourished, confused, hadn't spoken a coherent sentence in years, according to the psychiatric facility that released her. They said she was hopeless. What changed? I gave her an old photo album someone donated. It had pictures of Kigali before the genocide, and when Maria saw them, she started singing, that same melody you've heard. And then she spoke just one word. Samuel. Eric's blood ran cold. Samuel? Your birth name, Mr. Mason. Before your French parents renamed you Eric, you were Samuel. The name hit him like a physical blow. Samuel. Somewhere deep in his consciousness, something recognized it. How do you know that was my name? Because for 3 years, every single day, I helped Maria search. We went through genocide survivor registries, orphanage records, adoption files. We found one record. A boy named Samuel, age 3, found wandering in the ruins of Nyamirambo district in May 1994, sent to St. Joseph Orphanage, adopted by French aid workers 6 months later and taken to Paris. Eric's hands gripped the steering wheel. That could be anyone. The record included a photo. Grace pulled out her phone, showed him an image. A little boy with enormous eyes stared at the camera, clutching a stuffed elephant. On his intake form, birthmark, left shoulder blade, star-shaped. Eric couldn't breathe. That's me, he whispered. That's Samuel, Grace corrected. The boy Maria has been searching for through 30 years of hell. My parents, my adoptive parents, they told me my birth parents died in the genocide. Why would they lie? Maybe they didn't know the truth. Maybe the records were wrong. Maybe they thought a clean break would be easier for a traumatized child. Grace's voice softened. Or maybe they knew, and they were afraid you want to come back. Eric leaned his head against the steering wheel. I need to know what happened. That day, what happened to us? I can't tell you everything. Only Maria knows the full story, and she can't speak it. But I've pieced together fragments over the years. Would you like to hear? Eric nodded, unable to speak. Grace took a breath. You lived in Nyamirambo, a neighborhood in Kigali. Your father was a teacher. Your mother, Maria, sold vegetables at the market. On April 6, 1994, the president's plane was shot down. By the morning of April 7th, the killing had started. Eric felt his chest tighten. Maria told me in fragments, in the rare moment she could speak. She said your father tried to get you all to safety. There was a church nearby where people were sheltering. But the militia came. They separated families. Your father was taken one way. You and Maria another. What happened to my father? Grace's silence was answer enough. Maria carried you for 3 days through chaos. She hid in houses with corpses, in banana plantations, anywhere she could find. You were 3 years old, and you cried for your papa. She sang to you to keep you quiet because noise meant death. The melody, the endless, haunting melody. On the 4th day, she made a decision. There was a convoy, Red Cross vehicles evacuating foreigners and some Rwandans. She knew she couldn't get on, but she thought maybe you could. So she gave you to a stranger, a white woman with kind eyes, and begged her to save you. Eric's vision blurred with tears. She gave me away? She saved your life, Grace said fiercely. She watched that convoy drive away with her only child, knowing she'd probably never see you again, because that was better than watching you die. And then she survived the next 3 months of genocide, while her mind slowly broke from loss. I don't remember any of this, Eric said, his voice cracking. Your mind protected you. Children who survive trauma often bury it. But the memories are there, Samuel, Eric, whoever you are. They're there. Eric wiped his eyes roughly. What happened to her after? She wandered for years, lost. The war ended, Rwanda rebuilt, but Maria was destroyed. She lived on the streets, sometimes in refugee camps. She couldn't work, couldn't integrate. Her mind was stuck in April 1994, searching for a little boy named Samuel. Eventually, someone got her to the psychiatric facility. They kept her medicated, quiet, but they couldn't heal her. When funding ran out, they released her to the streets again. And you found her. The shelter found her. I just listened. I've spent 3 years helping her look for you, because that's the only thing that brings her peace. The searching, the singing. It's the only way she can tell the story her words can't hold. Eric looked toward the clinic, where Maria waited. His mother, a stranger, a ghost from a past he couldn't remember, but that had shaped everything he was. I built my whole life trying to be someone else, he said quietly. Someone clean and successful and untouched by all this pain. And now you're telling me I'm the son of a genocide survivor, that I'm Samuel, not Eric, that everything I thought I knew was a lie. Not a lie, Grace said, just incomplete. You're both people, Eric. Samuel who survived, Eric who succeeded. The question is, can you be whole? Eric sat in silence, then finally started the car. Where are we going? Grace asked. Somewhere I should have gone 30 years ago. He drove them to Nyamirambo, to the old neighborhood. Most of it had been rebuilt, modernized, but some old buildings remained. Eric parked and walked the streets with Maria and Grace following. And then he saw it. A small house, paint peeling, somehow familiar. He stopped in front of it, his heart pounding. This is it, he whispered. I know this place. Maria began singing louder, more urgently. Eric closed his eyes and let the memory come. It rushed through him like water through a broken dam. Flashes of a woman singing, strong arms lifting him, a man's laughter, the smell of cooking, safety and love and home. And then the screaming, the running, the terror. Eric felt his knees in the middle of the street and remembered everything. Eric's past has finally caught up with him, and the truth is more devastating than he ever imagined. But remembering is just the beginning. Now he has to decide what to do with the truth. Don't miss the next chapter where Eric confronts the impossible choice between his two lives. Like and subscribe to see what happens next. Eric didn't sleep for 3 days. The memories came in waves, some clear, some fragmented, all overwhelming. He remembered his father teaching him to count, his mother singing while she cooked, the small house with the blue door, the sound of laughter, and then the other memories, the ones that came with screams. On the 4th day, he called a meeting at his hotel, not with business partners or investors, with Maria and Grace, and with Dr. Patricia, a trauma specialist who worked with genocide survivors. They sat in his private conference room, so different from the world Maria now inhabited. She looked tiny in the leather chair, still humming softly, her fingers tracing patterns on the polished table. I need to understand what happens next, Eric said. The DNA proves she's my mother. The memories are coming back, but she can't speak about it. She can barely function. How do I help her? Dr. Patricia leaned forward. What you're asking is complicated, Mr. Mason. Your mother suffers from severe PTSD, combined with what we call selective mutism. She can discuss simple, non-threatening topics. But anything connected to trauma, the genocide, losing you, the years of suffering, her mind literally cannot form the words. It's a protection mechanism. Can it be treated? With time, therapy, safety, and stability, some patients improve. But I won't lie to you. After 30 years, the patterns are deeply entrenched. She may never be able to speak about it directly. Eric looked at Maria. She was watching him with those eyes that held too much pain to speak. But she can sing about it, he said softly. Yes, music accesses different parts of the brain. For many trauma survivors, they can express through songs what they can't say in words. It's why she's been singing to you. It's the only language she has for love. What does she need? Stability, a safe place to live, consistent care, therapy, though it needs to be specialized, connection, especially with you, if you're willing. The brain can't heal in survival mode. She needs to feel safe enough to start processing. Eric nodded slowly. I could provide all of that. There's something else, Dr. Patricia said carefully. You need therapy too, Mr. Mason. You've experienced significant trauma, both the original events and now the recovered memories. The flashbacks you're having, the sleep disturbance, the emotional volatility, these are all symptoms of PTSD. I'm fine, Eric said automatically. Grace snorted. You're a mess. I've seen you 3 times in 4 days, and you look worse each time. When's the last time you ate? Eric didn't answer. He couldn't remember. You can't help her if you're drowning, Dr. Patricia said. I recommend we work with both of you, separately and together. This is a journey of healing for both mother and son. That afternoon, Eric made decisions. He canceled the next 2 weeks of meetings. He moved Maria out of the shelter into a suite at his hotel. Not as a guest, but as family. He hired Dr. Patricia full-time. He began therapy himself. And he started spending time with Maria. It was awkward at first. They sat in her suite, him in his expensive suit, her in new clothes that she touched nervously as if they might disappear. She sang. He listened. "I don't know how to do this," Eric admitted on the third day. "I don't know how to be your son." Maria's singing paused. She looked at him, really looked at him, and her hand reached out tentatively. She touched his face with trembling fingers, tracing his features like she was memorizing them. "Samuel," she whispered. Then the melody started again, but softer now, gentler. Eric felt tears on his cheeks. "I don't remember how to be Samuel. I've been Eric for so long." Grace, who had stayed to help with the transition, spoke from the corner. "Maybe you don't have to choose. Maybe you can be both." "How?" "Tell her about your life. Show her who you've become. She's been searching for Samuel, but Samuel grew up. He became Eric. She needs to know both people." So Eric started talking. He told Maria about Paris, about school, about his adoptive parents who had loved him even though they couldn't replace what he'd lost. He told her about returning to Rwanda, about building businesses, about wanting to help the country rebuild. Maria listened, her eyes never leaving his face. Sometimes she smiled. Sometimes she hummed in response. Once, when he told her about his first hotel opening, she clapped her hands like a delighted child. "You're proud of me," Eric realized, wonder in his voice. Maria nodded, then sang a few notes that somehow conveyed more pride than words ever could. In therapy, Eric learned things about trauma he'd never known, how it lives in the body, how children cope by forgetting, how success and achievement can be ways of running from pain. "You built an empire," Dr. Patricia observed during one session, "but you built it all on forgetting. What happens when you allow yourself to remember?" "It hurts," Eric admitted. "Yes, but hurt is how we know we're alive. Numb is what kept you safe as a child. But you're not a child anymore." The hardest session came 2 weeks in. Dr. Patricia asked if Maria could join them. "I want to try something," she said. "It's called narrative therapy. Maria, you've been trying to tell your story through singing. Samuel, Eric, you've been trying to understand it through memory. What if we tried to build a story together?" Maria looked frightened, but nodded. Dr. Patricia spoke gently. "Maria, I'm going to ask you questions. If you can answer with words, please do. If you can't, you can sing or hum yes or no. Eric will be here the whole time. You're safe. Can you try?" Maria's hand found Eric's and gripped it hard. "Try," she whispered. "On April 7, 1994, when the killing started, what did you do?" Maria's breathing quickened. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Then the melody started, fast and frantic. "That's okay," Dr. Patricia soothed. "The music is an answer. Eric, when you hear that melody, will you feel?" "Fear," Eric said. "Running. Someone carrying me." Maria squeezed his hand. "Yes, Maria, you carried him to safety?" A nod. "But you couldn't save yourself?" Maria's face crumpled. Tears streamed down her cheeks. She opened her mouth, and for the first time since Eric had met her, words came out about the past. "I gave him away," she sobbed. "My baby, I gave him away." And then she broke. 30 years of grief pouring out in racking sobs that shook her whole body. Eric pulled her into his arms and held her while she cried. While they both cried, for the family that died and the years they lost and the impossible choice that saved his life and broke hers. Mother and son are finally facing the truth together. But the hardest part is still ahead. Can Eric accept what his mother sacrificed? Can Maria learn to live again after decades of searching? Keep watching to see how this incredible story of loss and love reaches its powerful conclusion. 3 months later, Eric stood in front of his board of directors with an announcement that would change everything. "I'm restructuring the company," he said. "Effective immediately. 50% of the Grand Rwanda Hotel's profits will go to a new foundation, the Samuel Foundation, dedicated to supporting genocide survivors, particularly those with mental health needs." The room erupted in protest. His investors, his business partners, all talking at once about fiduciary responsibility and shareholder value. Eric waited for silence. I'm also stepping back from daily operations for 6 months. James will serve as acting CEO, while I take time to focus on family. Family? His chief financial officer looked confused. You don't have family in Rwanda. I do now, Eric said simply. The meeting ended badly. 2 investors threatened to pull out. His lawyers warned him about breach of contract. His accountant said he was throwing away millions. Eric didn't care. That afternoon, he took Maria to a place she'd been too afraid to visit, the house in Nyamirambo. With Grace's help and Dr. Patricia's support, they stood in front of the building where Samuel had lived 31 years ago. It's different, Maria whispered, one of her good days when words came easier. Everything's different, Eric agreed, but we're still here. They walked through the neighborhood together. Maria showed him where the market had been, where his father taught school, where she'd sung to him every night before bed. Some memories made her smile. Others made her sing that sad melody. But she was trying. That was what mattered. In the months that followed, they built a routine. Mornings, Maria had therapy. Afternoons, they spent together, sometimes talking, sometimes sitting in comfortable silence, sometimes with Maria teaching Eric the songs from his childhood. Evenings, Eric worked on the foundation, channeling his wealth toward healing rather than just building. The Samuel Foundation opened with modest goals: a counseling center for genocide survivors, a shelter with proper mental health support, job training programs for those who've been lost in the system like Maria. At the opening ceremony, Eric gave a speech he'd written and rewritten a dozen times. 31 years ago, I was Samuel, a 3-year-old boy who lost everything. I became Eric, a man who built everything. I thought those were 2 different people. I was wrong. He gestured to Maria, sitting in the front row in a new dress, her eyes bright with tears. This woman saved my life by letting me go. She survived the genocide. She survived losing her mind from grief. She survived 3 decades on the streets, searching for a child who'd forgotten her. And when she found me, she didn't demand anything. She just sang. Eric's voice broke slightly. I don't have her strength. I don't have her resilience. But I have her genes. I have her love. And I have the resources to make sure no other survivor has to suffer alone the way she did. The room full of survivors, therapists, and supporters erupted in applause. Maria stood, tears streaming down her face, and began to sing. Not the sad melody this time, but something new, something that sounded like hope. Progress wasn't linear. Maria had bad days when she couldn't speak at all, when the memories overwhelmed her. Eric had nightmares where he was 3 years old again, hiding from machetes and screaming. They both worked with Dr. Patricia, learning to carry their trauma rather than being crushed by it. Grace became a constant presence, helping bridge the gap between mother and son, translating Maria's songs into words Eric could understand. On the 1-year anniversary of their reunion, Eric threw a small party at the foundation. It had grown beyond his expectations. 3 counseling centers now, 2 shelters, job placement for over 200 survivors. Maria moved through the party, greeting everyone, more present than Eric had ever seen her. She still sang often, but now she also talked, laughed, lived. She's different, Dr. Patricia observed. The structure, the safety, the purpose, it's given her brain permission to heal. Will she ever be who she was before? Eric asked. No, but none of us are who we were before our traumas. The goal isn't to erase the past. It's to integrate it, to be whole, not perfect. That evening, after the party, Eric and Maria sat on the balcony of her apartment, a place the foundation maintained for long-term residents who needed ongoing support. She was one of the counselors now, working with others who couldn't speak their pain, showing them that healing was possible. I'm proud of you, Eric said. Maria smiled. Proud of you too, Samuel. She still called him Samuel sometimes. He'd stopped correcting her. Mom, Eric said carefully. He'd never called her that before. Can I ask you something? Ask. Do you regret it? Giving me to that woman? If you'd kept me, we'd have suffered together. But we wouldn't have lost all those years. Maria was quiet for a long time. Then she spoke, her words careful but clear. I watched thousands die. Babies, children, macheted in front of their mothers. I couldn't save your father. I couldn't save my sisters, my parents, my friends, but I could save you. She touched his face gently. You lived. You thrived. You became this. She gestured to the foundation, to the city, to everything he'd built. No regret, only gratitude. But you lost so much. I lost everything, Maria agreed. And I found you again. That's the miracle, Samuel. Not that we survived, that we found each other anyway. Eric pulled her into a hug. This small woman who'd endure the unendurable, who'd love him enough to let him go, who'd never stop searching even when her mind forgot how. I'm going to stay, he said. Not just in Rwanda. Here, with you. No more running from who I am. Samuel and Eric. Maria said softly. Both. Together. Both. Together. From the street below, a musician was playing. Traditional Rwandan drums mixing with modern instruments, old and new, creating something beautiful. Maria began to hum along, but this time, Eric joined her. He didn't know all the words to the songs his mother had sung him as a child, but he was learning. They both were learning how to be a family again, how to honor the past without being destroyed by it, how to build a future on the foundation of survival and love. The genocide had tried to erase them, but they were still here, still singing, still fighting, still healing, and that, Eric realized, was victory enough. Thank you for watching this incredible journey of loss, survival, and reunion. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Comment below and tell us what you think. Could you forgive? Could you rebuild? Let us know your thoughts. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss our next powerful story.